Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Today is May 5th, and this is another of our bi-weekly SIG CLI calls. My name is Mate, and I'll be your host, joined with Eddie and Sean as my two co-hosts for SIG CLI. Our agenda is pretty packed, so I'll just jump right into. I put in the announcements 122 release dates. The one important date that is very crucial for everyone is the enhancement freeze, which is next Thursday, which is May 13th. So any new features, updates, changes from alpha to beta and whatnot, those have to land by the next Thursday. If you need help pushing some of the enhancement through, reach out to any of the leads, which will be myself, Sean, Eddie, and Phil. We will help you to go through those by next Thursday. And we will be talking about enhancements in a while as well. That's one thing. The other thing is something that I sent last week to SIG CLI, but I haven't put it here. I'll do that after the call. Is we've changed slightly a bit how we are going to organize and cancel the meetings. We would like to see agenda being pre-populated 24 hours prior to the call. And if the agenda for the next call is empty 24 hours prior to the call, which it will be usually around 6 p.m. Central European time, noon for US Eastern, and 9 a.m. for West Coast. If by that time the agenda is empty, we will be canceling the call. This will help all of us to better prepare, review the topics if there are something filled in appropriately, and cancel if there's nothing in the agenda. I'll link to the email introducing this. And
that's not to say that we can't add topics during the meeting. It's just if we don't have anything on the agenda, we are going to not have a meeting. So
yes, that is correct. This is more to give everyone a heads up because in the past, what we used to end up doing is we canceled the call an hour, 2 hours prior to the call, which might work for people in the European or eventually in the US Eastern time zone, but it is a complete failure, for example, for folks in the West Coast. So to protect everyone's time, we will be canceling 24 hours prior so that we're clear with this. I think that's all. Eddie, Sean, you wanted to add something more to the announcements?
No, I got nothing.
Okay, cool. With that, I see new faces in the call. So now is your time to introduce yourself. Tell a little bit about yourself. What do you do? What do you expect from SIG CLI? Go ahead.
Hi. Oh, sorry, did I speak over someone?
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Yanis.
Hi, my name is Yanis. I'm a software engineer at Arito, and I was the release manager for Kubeflow 1.3. Kubeflow is a small project about Kubernetes and machine learning. And I'm hoping to tell you a bit about how we use Kustomize, some of the problems we bump into. And I hope that we can work more closely with upstream Kustomize, provide a use case, provide even contributions, and have everyone benefit from that.
Awesome. We're always open for any feedback, good or bad, about any of our sub-projects. Anyone else?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm slated. Yeah, so I'm one of the release notes shadow for 1.22. And so I was looking to find out other more stuff, in the Kubernetes ecosystem to contribute to. And I bumped across SIG CLI, and like it caught my eye. Like maybe I can make some meaningful contributions here. So yeah, I'm looking for something, beginner friendly, because I'm not very experienced in the entire ecosystem, and Kubernetes requires a lot of context. So hoping to start small. So let me know if there are any beginner issues or any KEPs that require, like the good first issues that I can get hold of. I'd love to, lurk around actually. So yeah, cheers.
Right, that's something that I completely forgot. So we have two enhancements liaisons, if I said it properly, which will be basically two people. What is your name? Because you have one in the, I don't know why Zoom is showing me different names. I see Big on one side and Sladen on the other side. Which one is the correct one?
Yeah, my name is Sladen. Yeah.
Okay, Sladen.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
So Sladen is one of them. And he will help us with gathering the enhancements and pushing them through to the SIG release, because starting from 121, SIG release is not reaching out to SIGs for enhancements, but it's more about we need to explicitly tell them that this is something that we will be working on. There is a document where we need to put the enhancements. So we will be working closely with Sladen. And the other person is, I can't remember.
I am. Hi, I'm Biga. We are talked before in the Slack. Like Sladen, we attended the enhancement KIPS improvement, and I'm happy to join the team.
Awesome, welcome.
Welcome.
I did remember Biga was one of the people that I was talking to earlier. Too many names today.
Yeah.
Going through Slacks and whatnot. Do we have anyone else that is new to the team? I think I recognize the rest of the name. Okay, with that, we can move on to the main topics. Yanis, I assume you want to be presenting. I'll make a co-host and I'll stop sharing. So the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Should we take notes on this, Yanis?
I don't know. How do you mean?
Well, you say you're going to provide some feedback on customize. Should we be writing this?
I'm taking some notes for sure.
Okay, good, great.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So this is, I will be providing the slides as well. Everything that I will show, I will make available right after the meeting. And I think the recording will also be available, right?
That is correct. The recording will be posted as soon as Zoom gives it to me.
Okay. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
It should be a blue slide, right?
Kubeflow's use of customize.
Okay.
Very nice background.
Thank you. Our designer did it. He's amazing. So I have a small presentation today. I want to show everyone. I prepared it with George. Some people may be familiar with George. I think he does a lot of community stuff in Kubernetes as well. So let me get started. So first of all, I want to talk a bit about Kubeflow and what Kubeflow is. In one sentence, Kubeflow is a machine learning platform that is built on top of Kubernetes. And because of that, we try to keep everything simple, portable, and scalable. I'm trying to give a small idea of the problem we're trying to solve. You've probably seen this slide a million times before, but I'm going to say it again. The idea behind this slide is that many people think most of the time in machine learning projects is spent on writing ML code and models, when in reality, most of the time and problems are in the infrastructure that support and surround the machine learning processes. So this is the type of problem that we're trying to tackle here. And Kubernetes gives the ideal platform for doing this. And finally, Kubeflow is an open source project. We have a lot of contributors, and we would love to welcome new contributors in this area. So a couple a quick introduction in Kubeflow and Customize. And so we've been using Customize for about 2 years now in Kubeflow. We have about 400 customizations by doing a quick find in our repo. And we have a dedicated manifest repo where we gather all our manifests. And this is a kind of GitOps repo, if you will, that a user can fork and customize and deploy their own stuff. Before our 1.3 release, 1.3 is what we released right now, we had some custom tooling, which we called KFCTL, which was very painful to maintain. And in general, we didn't want, we wanted to integrate with standard tools like Customize. So in 1.3, we tried to move everything to plain Customize and use only that for our manifest. And we've been pretty successful with that. Right now, a user can deploy just with Customize and kubectl. And we've seen that people can also integrate much more easily with other systems like Argo when we use just Customize, which is pretty standard. Now, while working with so many customizations, we've bumped into a number of issues that we feel are probably issues for other projects as well. So I wanted to make a slide and list them all here, just to let you know that these are things that are bugging us, and we'd love to work together with you to solve them. So that's another thing. We're trying to create this type of relationship with upstream, where we'll be heavy users of Customize, and we'll probably bump into things that other people will bump to or have bumped to, but in private. And we would like to open a channel of communication so that we can tell upstream, this use case doesn't work as we expected it to, or something similar. And then also be able to contribute, to devote some time to contribute as well. Like, we'd like to develop this type of relationship and trust slowly, with time, of course. This doesn't happen overnight. Just to give a quick overview, we had some problems upgrading to Customize v4 because there was a change in the order that Customize prints resources. Then, of course, we have a small problem with vars in Customize, which I know there are a lot of upstream efforts to remove. Then in the new Customize, there is a library that doesn't support UTF-8 text in comments, which breaks basically anyone who uses UTF-8 text in comments, which are mostly people from non-English speaking languages. For example, I know we had some, I was using some customizations. I had some text in Greek, and then it wasn't working in version 4. And then the strategic merge patch is something that we use to delete resources, and we're not sure how much it is supported. So we'd like to work together to better understand that. We'd like also to be able to extend Customize to patch JSON inside config maps, because we've seen that the inability to do so requires us to copy huge chunks of config. And finally, we have found a use case where if we combine two transformers, there is a pretty weird, the patching becomes pretty weird. I believe we haven't opened an upstream issue yet, but this is what we're going to do very soon. So again, I don't want to get into the technical detail. It's just a quick rundown of things we've bumped into. And of course, for anything that does not have an upstream issue right now, we will open one very soon. And finally, to wrap up, I want this to be very quick. I think that Kubeflow is probably one of the biggest open source adopters of Customize. I know big open source projects, other big open source projects have adopted Customize as well, but I think we use it a lot. I don't think anyone else has this many customizations in one project. But for moving on, we hope to establish a relationship where we can develop a trust with upstream and discuss our problems, help with development, and in general, have a constant communication. And the longer goal is to have Kubeflow, of course, as a champion use case of Kustomize. What we think is that the problems that we bump into are going to be problems others bump into. And by fixing them, we're going to advance both projects, essentially. That's all from my part.
Hey, Maciej, can I have a minute to respond?
Right, that's literally what I was asking for you to
Okay.
go ahead.
Great. Hey, first off, thank you so much. Those are that's a great summary. I'm familiar with all those issues, and as you know, we've been chatting, especially on issue 3794, which is the ordering issue. And while we've got Sean and Maciej here, this would be a good time to talk about the ordering issue. So I can sum it up this way. When Kustomize started a couple of years ago, there was some desire to have Kustomize do some ordering. So it did do some ordering. So we would put some of the cluster scoped resources first, particularly namespace, because if you apply a bunch of resources and some of them are in a namespace and that namespace doesn't exist, you're going to have an error. So Kustomize did some sort of rudimentary sorting at the beginning. At some point, we thought a better approach would be to just honor the ordering that people specified in their customization files and not necessarily do the sort. So now Kustomize can do two things, depending on a flag. It can, by default, it's going to continue doing this legacy sorting. And with the flag, it will not do the sorting. It will just respect whatever order you specify in your customization files and doing a depth first search. So at issue here is how much should clients be worried about sorting of objects that are going into a Kubernetes cluster into the apply operation, because controllers are supposed to reconcile their state and they're supposed to survive. They're supposed to be able to handle, you know, in an ideal sense, arbitrary ordering. Now, I think we do want to do cluster scoped first and then namespace scoped second. And a user can, of course, order things that way in their customization files. But I think you've got a problem now. You've got like 400 files, and you don't necessarily want to go back and edit all of those. So here's the thing. The question I have for like Maciej and Sean and for discussion is like, how much should clients worry about how they order things in an apply?
So I have a couple of points. So the general way that so up until now, there has been really no tool to order resources and wait for resources to come up before another resource is applied. And generally what we do is you apply resources, say like you had a CRD, and then you have an instance of that custom resource in the same apply. It's a lot, most of them or many of them are going to fail, and then you apply it again. It's kind of like an idempotent principle where you just keep running it multiple times, and then it eventually works, which doesn't work for everybody, and which is why I actually have a branch in the CLI utils where I've created an ordering, and it basically it depends on annotation, so that you could say that one particular resource depends on another resource, and it will apply them. It'll create a graph, it'll do a topological sort, and it will order them in the correct, it'll sort them in the correct order and apply them in the correct order. In addition, there is one more nuance in that not only do you need to apply resources in the correct order, you need to apply them in the correct order. And sometimes you need to wait for a status in the cluster before, like for instance, for a custom resource definition, you have to wait until it's established before you can apply a custom resource of that definition. And so actually in this branch that I have in CLI utils that I've been experimenting with, it has certain tasks, including a wait task. It'll wait on a particular status for this resource in the cluster until it tries to apply the next set of resources. And so there are efforts, actually substantial efforts to actually, experiment with this and to approach this problem. It's not just ordering, it's ordering and then waiting on a particular status before the next resource can be applied. And so it ends up being a significant effort. Katrina has a question.
Yeah, I just have a point on that. I think it's great that SIG CLI is working on that in CLI utils, and that we'll be able to provide maybe a more canonical solution. But I wanted to mention that there are already a whole series of mature tools out there that do this and have their own opinions about how it should be done. I used to maintain one of them, that's why I'm pretty keenly aware of it. But I know it's also was not the only one out there. So the one I maintained was called Crane. There's another one called KApp, and there's others that I don't know the names offhand. And I think there's kind of a matter of a separation of concerns here, where like Kustomize is a configuration generation tool. And I think like the way that you're using it is the canonical way, where you're committing the customizations to a repo and then the deploy is a separate step. And then the other set of concerns is the like actual deploy step, where you have those orchestration concerns, and those tools care about ordering, they care about dependencies and that sort of thing. So that's my take on it.
I mean, I'm pretty much in the same camp. The ordering is a problem. And the most important issue is a tool cannot expect, you cannot expect a tool to know all the possible variants of the ordering of resources. It will work fine for the built-ins because we can easily tell that a namespace should be the first and everything else should follow. But if you create a CRD that is somehow bigger than the namespace, or you come up with some primitive to organize several namespace into a bigger namespace, there's no way Kustomize will be able to tell that this CRD should be, or this CR should be created before namespace and only then follow up. So what we did also in our internal tooling is that we have numbers in the files, and the files are processed in order of defining them. That's one possible take, and it's pretty explicit because the file name tells you the order, and you can easily tell how this should be organized. And like Jeff said earlier, that capability already exists. I'm pretty sure that it'll take some more time to rework the manifest for Kubeflow, given that there are this many. But that will be the general direction that we will be pushing people towards.
Yeah, the flip side of all that is that it's completely theoretically true that you can always make a custom resource that's going to be really slow to get ready. And, it doesn't even matter maybe where you order it. It may just be always really too slow, and everything else is going to come in and fail unless you break it up into two separate applies and you do a wait. But that said, it's possible that for Kubeflow's particular application space, that kind of stuff just doesn't happen most of the time. And you might be able to just get what you want 99% of the time by ordering them in the customization files.
To clarify, we do get these types of errors. It's not that we don't get them. We do get errors when you apply CRD and then you apply a custom resource and it's not ready. This is normal. This is how Kubernetes works. And the way that we get around it, because we try to be as standard as possible and let people use their own tooling, is that we simply apply again. This is what we do.
Yeah.
And to give a small overview of the problem that we faced is that there is something called a mutating webhook and a validating webhook, which essentially registers extra logic for certain resources. And what happens is, in the older customized releases, these were applied first. So when you applied the package, first you registered the new logic, and then you applied the custom resource, and the new logic ran, which is, I guess, why you applied that new logic in the first place. But then what happened is that someone created the customization which had a mutating webhook and the custom resource in it. They tried to apply it, and it failed because the webhook was not ready yet, which is normal. It takes some time to be ready. And the way they fix that is they reorder the thing. So when you apply new logic and the new resource, the new logic is registered after the resource is created. So it never runs, essentially. They override it this way. And what happened in our case is that it placed the mutating webhook for Istio, which injects sidecars, at the very end. So everything was created, nothing got an Istio sidecar, and it failed, which didn't happen in previous versions. This is what triggered this issue, essentially. And I think, Jeff, it was that proposed a middle ground solution, essentially, to implement a transformer, I think, in order to be able to use any user-defined order as a middle ground solution.
So we can do something like that. I just want to make sure everybody understands it. For the record, like if something doesn't work because of an order and you change the ordering and it does work, effectively you just kind of got lucky, right? It's not going to work long term because of the reconciling nature of Kubernetes. So like it might work on Monday, but then on Tuesday it won't. But again, just for practical matters, we can try to come up with some workaround that might like save you from, Katrina though makes a point too that it's maybe sets a dangerous precedent to like have clients do this sort of ordering without having the without educating people that they also need to think about waiting.
Yeah, so that would be my point, is that you could get the correct ordering and that's not enough, right? So you could get where it's creating the CRD before the custom resource, and there's a race condition there, because it could be that the CRD is not yet established when you apply the custom resource. So I think, sometimes it will work and sometimes it might not, and it's going to be very subtle and difficult to figure out. It's not just the ordering, it's ordering and waiting on a particular status for which I'm not sure that it can be implemented in Kustomize.
Right, I'm not talking about the waiting part though, right? I understand that is out of scope, of course. And the problem is that if you try the reverse order in your example, if you try to apply the custom resource first and then the CRD, it will fail. It won't succeed with in an erroneous state. This is what happens.
I understand. Your argument is that it will guaranteed always fail. It doesn't have a chance to succeed at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And the counter argument is that when it does succeed, it's kind of, you're just getting lucky anyway, because fundamentally Kubernetes is a giant race condition. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the point for us for Kustomize is that it was not really advisable in the first place to try to have an opinion about order that seems deployable. That was arguably a mistake. We can't take it back, so we have the legacy flag and preserves the old behavior, but we don't want to continue to be in the business of trying to determine an order that seems like it's going to work, because that's kind of a doomed effort. So something in the middle, like Jeff said, where enabling the user to that is not going to work for somebody in the long run, but would still have inject some flexibility for folks who are
I'm sorry.
In a tough.
Yes, I think, Katerina, that you dropped for like 10 seconds. I saw someone wrote in the chat as well, so it wasn't only me.
I think we're in agreement with regards to the ordering and their that it's something out of the scope of customize. And I'm gonna cut this further discussion about Kubeflow's use of customize. We can continue the topic though next time. We still have about 25 minutes before top of the hour and end of the call. And I would like to go through our 122 planning items. So Yanis, if you feel like you want to follow up the discussions, you can either do that through GitHub, or we can revisit the same discussion in 2 weeks. You okay with that one?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool.
Thanks for the discussion today. And
Yeah,
we'll be following up on GitHub.
Cool. Awesome. Let me share back my screen because I have all the things over there. Of course, I lost everything else. So 122 planning. My tongue is being all over the place. First of all, there are two actual enhancements that we are working on. First one is the sub-resource support for kubectl, which Nikita presented about 4 weeks ago, if I remember correctly. This was basically about adding a sub-resource flag to support getting, editing, and patching and applying sub-resources like scale or status. Are there any particular questions? I remember, and Nikita commented earlier today in the Slack thread that I created last week for all those topics that I put also in the agenda. If anyone had any questions, I'm quickly checking the Slack. The only comment there I saw was from Nikita, where she said that she will be updating the enhancements over the next couple of days. So we're hoping to get that one done by the enhancement freeze date. Are there any other questions about this one? Okay. Moving on to the next one. This one is actually from Sean. So Sean in 121 introduced something like HTTP request headers, where we send information about the command and arguments you're passing to a kubectl command. This is useful for monitoring what people are using kubectl for, what are the most frequently executed commands, what kind of flags, and so forth. The idea in 122 is to push this functionality to beta, which basically means we would most likely enable this one by default. Is that correct, Sean?
That's correct. So moving it to beta, it's already alpha. The code for alpha and a feature flag already exists. So I've started working on the KEP to bring it to beta. And I think one of the bigger items we have to, or hurdles we have to get past, and I don't think we have to do it in the KEP, but we need to actually have some documentation in the real kubectl, because it'll be, once we move it to beta, it will be default. And so there's a couple of hurdles. I know that the enhancement freeze is the 13th next week. And I think that a lot of what I'll be implementing with the KEP is saying what we are going to do, because the code freeze is going to be after that. But yeah, I've started along this process, and really glad to see that we had a couple of people from the enhancement liaison here today. How you doing? I'm Sean. I'll be trying to move this to beta.
I had one question with regard to this. I remember a discussion a couple of weeks back that the X headers were not passed into the Kube API server. Is that something that requires further work or eventual
Yes.
discussion with SIG API machinery?
Oh, you're talking about for the validating and mutating webhooks, that those headers
Yes.
weren't being. So I haven't actually, that's a good point. That's something that I need to bring up. What I thought I was answering there was that the IETF has mentioned that X headers are no longer supported. And so we're going to change our headers to just basically kubectl command, or whatever the name of the headers are. They're not going to be prefixed by X. But yes, that's correct. That's something that had dropped off my radar, which is to talk to the API machinery to ask about how these headers are being sent to mutating and validating webhooks, but also how they're going to be processed to extension API servers, which is kind of an esoteric topic itself. How these headers are moving around the API machinery, and maybe even how they're being logged.
So my question would be more, is this something that we want to target in 122, or we would try to
So I
to
think
address this, and then eventually if we succeed, then okay, but it's not a hard requirement for getting us to beta with this.
that was my assumption, was that there's going to be a significant amount of value, even if they aren't being sent to, for instance, validating and mutating webhooks. Our biggest use case that we've identified is basically just telemetry, just storing these headers in logs that somebody else can consume and see how people are using kube control in the system.
Okay, so we can push that one over before GA. It would be good to make sure this this gets reflected in the enhancements you will be updating.
Good point.
Cool, thanks. Does anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, Eddie.
I wonder if, Sean, do you have any thoughts around how we as a SIG can get some of that data? Maybe we can put out a call to the end user community and give them a query to run that they can share that with us and make sure they obfuscate anything private.
That's actually a good point. I mean, that's something that I want to have better visibility on. And I think it happens differently. Like, depends on how they connect up. Maybe Prometheus or other monitoring solutions. I think that there's going to be dozens and hundreds of different ways in which this data gets surfaced. But we would like to know at least some of the common ways. And I don't think, so I guess the answer is I don't think that there's just one way it's going to be done. I think it's, like for AWS, there's probably a monitoring solution that goes through logs and surfaces stuff. And I think that, maybe Microsoft has their own tools to do that, and this, I guess one of the standard tools is going to be what, Prometheus, or so I think that there's going to be many different ways that this happens, but we should have our we should understand how, at least some of the common ways in which that happens. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I think we can probably put together a blog post, maybe not necessarily right now, but we can target that for, let's say, 123, explaining what we would be looking people to gather, how to do it in the most common and generic way, and then everyone can work their way up from the generic way to their specifics. If that would be possible, I think that would be valuable. And then we would just say, oh, just pop up into SIG CLI and share your data with us, because we're more than happy to learn from that.
And the most important concept is that we have a session ID for each command. So like each command can end up with dozens of REST calls, and we want people to know that they should take those, and each one of them will have the same UUID, the same unique identifier, so that you can combine these and say, okay, well, these 7 REST calls were actually just one kube control call, and combine them correctly. So we're going to actually have to do some education so that whoever is gathering this telemetry knows how to do that process.
Yep, that's correct. Are there any other questions for Sean? Okay. Moving on to the next topic. So we've been talking about this topic for quite a while, and after last week's, or even that was before, the bug scrub, I've opened an umbrella issue where I described the end goal, which is that we want to refactor all the commands and to be able to split flags from options. Eddie and myself, we dug into it for a little bit, and we found that there's a wait command that clearly does that already. This will be something like, and we already have a bunch of folks that accepted and picked up different commands. I started looking into logs and get. Eddie said he will look into some simple config commands. Katrina mentioned train or describe. Ricardo mentioned basic create commands. And I see other people already are looking into this topic. So I'm pretty sure that we can somehow slowly spread the load. What I would like to achieve from this, and that's definitely not something that we want to see happening around 122, but maybe in the long run, without any specific date, is a description of what a perfect command, maybe perfect, yeah, something along those lines, what a typical kubectl command looks like. And myself, Sean, Eddie, and pretty much all of us, we've been giving several talks already about the topic, what a kubectl command looks like. What I would like to see is formalize what we come up with after working through several examples and put those thoughts into a cap. And then when there will be new people coming in, we will be able to point them to this as their starting point and as a reference for working with kubectl. So feel free to look at it and comment and pick up other commands which you are interested in working on.
Yeah, I'm gonna toss a disclaimer on that thread too. So Lau actually already did a PR. Shout out to Lau, great job. I took a look at it last night. I tossed a hold on there. I think he pulled out the validate and complete commands, which I don't think the wait had. So I think we're just basically the TLDRs. I think we're gonna have to see a few of these before we say like, yes, this is the way forward for sure. And so I'm going to toss a disclaimer on there that's just like, hey, like, you know, just this one will sit for a bit while we gather and wait. So if you're taking this on, just be mindful you might have to redo a bunch of work if we change our mind. So
yes, and it's definitely not something that we are, oh, it has to be done for 122. I'll be prepared that it might take a little bit, a few iterations where we are in parallel, we are also looking into this from different commands. Different commands have different specifics, and we're trying to wrap our heads around. Wait, which I linked there, is very simplistic, and it was written from start as a command that can be embedded in different commands. So it was created such that it was very, from start, it was created as with the separation in mind. A lot of the existing commands were not. Some are simpler, some are a little bit more complicated. So while you're working, it will depend on which commands. If you pick up, for example, API resources or API versions, these were very simple. If I remember correctly, one of those, I can't remember which, does not even have flags. So in that case, the split won't even happen. So that's a separate topic as well. And we need to make sure that this will be expressed in the CAP as well. So yes, you need to be very patient when picking on this topic, like Eddie said. Okay, the next topic is something that is open for way too long since November 1. And Mark put together and rewrote all the completions to go. From what I've heard from people, it is lightning fast. It is working amazingly well. I haven't personally got a chance to look into it. And I just realized that GitHub just changed their colors because the links are not blue anymore, which is a little bit irritating. They're just bold. As a side off topic, so we would want to see a little bit more folks looking into this PR. This is something that I do want to see merged for 122. We will definitely won't be able to bring this back because that's a new feature, and we don't bring back features. But from the initial discussion that I had with Eddie, I think Sean also mentioned looking into it. It's pretty good, and Brian as well. It's pretty good. It's pretty big, unfortunately. So that requires a little bit of more eyes looking into this. But yes, this is something that we want to see land for kubectl in 122. So if you have some time, have a look at it and give it a try locally. That might be a reasonable feedback if you just say there that, oh, I give it a try. I've tried this, that, and it all worked. And put there your thumbs up, and then we will know that the more people tried it out, there won't be any major problems with this.
So it's a massive PR that does this for many different commands, and so it might be good to break it up and say, okay, well, I'm going to check, these few commands, and then somebody else can check out the other commands. If we want to put this all in together, and Brian made a good point that there's a good reason to have this massive PR go through, in that we probably don't want to have different completions for different commands. So if you're going to work on a particular few commands, just I would say throw a comment on the PR and say I'm validating these X commands, these N commands, and so we all don't pile on just like one part of this PR, one or two commands. We can actually get all of them.
Yeah, I actually made a comment. I took a look at this the other day, and it looks pretty good. There's a lot of boilerplate code that's like copied from command to command to command. So one of the suggestions I made was refactoring that into a reusable completions component, because if you're fetching a list of pods in one command and you're doing it again in another command, you don't have to like test that in both commands. You can test that in one place. And I think if he refactors it a little bit, it's going to be a little less intimidating to review. So I think he might be doing that right now, but I'm not sure.
And to add a little bit more color, this particular issue will help us solve, if I remember correctly, two most frequently upvoted issues for kubectl, which also goes in line with what I stated in the email sent out about a week ago that we would be trying to solve first the most voted issues. So yeah, Eddie just saying that PowerShell and Fish was the two most frequently requested completions for kubectl. Okay, so that will be the topic that we will be actively working on. Some are specifically targeted for 122, others not necessarily. And there are 3 other topics that I want to bring up, which are more for longer run. The first one is from Eddie about adding ANSI colors, but more like about user preferences in general. Eddie, want to talk about it a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I'll specifically do.
Sorry, Eddie, I muted you instead of myself.
I will specifically be doing a KEP for the user preferences, so like a kuberc or whatever the hell we decide to call it. I can ping D Tyler one and we can pick up. I think that they were looking at doing the actual KEP for the colors, but the kuberc user preferences, separating that from a actual kube config for cert, cluster cert authentication and whatnot. That's what I'll be focusing on, because I think that's going to be a blocker for a bunch of these other things that we want to do that are going to have defaults and flags that users will have to opt into. And yeah.
Any particular questions? If you feel like you have some input, feel free to reach out to Eddie and either ask questions or provide feedback. I'm pretty sure that the more feedback we get, the better the outcome and the enhancement will be.
Yeah, Ricardo offered to help too. So I don't know if I'll get that kept done for next week, but I'll definitely start on it.
Yeah, like I said, it's not 122 items, so it doesn't have to land or even be a PR right away. The next topic is actually from Ricardo, and he already sent out an email to KDev and SIG CLI as well about kubectl return code normalization. This was discussed. I'm just looking at the CAP issue almost 2 months ago during our meetings. Ricardo already put together a proposal. If I remember correctly, it's an ongoing issue. We're not planning to address this in any way for 122. We want to gather as much as possible feedback, and based off of that, we will try to put together the enhancements and then slowly move forward with the actual implementation. Are there any particular questions for this one? Okay, the last one. We still have about 2 minutes. I'll try to finish on time. Kubectl events, that's something that I put together with Himanshu from SIG UX. Basically, the idea was to have an improved version of kubectl get events, which would allow you to filter and work with events in a smarter way than what get does currently, because it's very limited, being a generic command for everything. The proposal itself was merged last year. Unfortunately, the implementation hasn't moved. If I remember correctly, there is one person that was interested in. He put together a proposal implementation. I haven't looked at it. I would like to give it a try, but I'm not sure if this will be something that we will push through for 122. Even if we will, that will be an alpha command, so I'm not worried. We can start slowly pushing this forward. If I remember correctly, the issue, the PR should be linked towards the end. Yes. So Brian put together from Weaveworks a proposed solution. So if you're interested into it, feel free to have a look at it, and we can have a discussion in that PR as well. Okay, I think those were all of the topics that we want to go through for 122. We have 1 minute left for stand-ups. I noticed Paul was here. Paul, do you have any updates on KUI?
No, we're still working on some things, but no status.
Okay, cool, fair. Jeff, any updates customize wise?
Now we're working on the VAR deprecation and heading towards defining what the customized API version 1.0 will be. And the big blocker there is getting rid of the VARs feature.
If I remember correctly, there was a topic with regards to Open API in Customize because I can't remember his name. He got rid of the Open API, Go Open API library specifically in kubectl, and he had an open PR for removing that same thing from Customize. I think Katrina was looking at it. I'm not sure if
Yeah,
you are aware of it.
That's being discussed in pull PR 3827. There are some issues with that. I think it's going to work, but there are some issues with folks that are depending on the old version 20 or older of the fundamental case libraries, because those depend on a very old version of Customize. So anybody who's depending on those old versions of Customize, but then the new Open API stuff is going to have some linker errors, basically. But we do have a path forward, and that's being discussed in the PR 3827 in Customize.
Cool, awesome. That's great to hear. Okay. We're 1 minute past top of the hour. I think we are done for today. Thank you very much, all. It was very amazing seeing you as usual, and we had an amazing discussion throughout the past hour. Thank you very much. See you in 2 weeks, if I remember correctly. Bye, all.
Thanks.